All right. So we're recording. What's going
Here
on?
we go.
2022.
Unbelievable. Years are going by too fast. Slow it down.
Crazy. What do you think of everything going on right now? All the
It's
stuff, all the things on TV, everything you're hearing. How do you make sense of everything going on?
it's like going through a fog. I'm trying to get through the fog to see where the clearance is. I can't get there.
Yeah.
Why? Because of all the my history, and where how I grew up and how I saw the world based on my values, how I was brought up. And now I see the new horizon, the new generations, which is a very much different than the way I saw the world. And I'm trying to make sense of it, and I just can't do it. So I'm like confused. Do you,
Yep.
you remember Moonstruck? Do you see that movie? It's one of my
No, I
favorite
heard of
all
it.
time
I've heard of it.
my
Yeah.
all-time favorite movies. And is this old man? He's part of the family, and and it's he lives with um, his father and his daughter, and so you got a couple of generations in there. And so the daughter gets engaged to someone who's in Italy, and he's very much attached to the mother, and the mother's dying. And he comes back and says, I can't marry you because it'll jinx my mother's health, and so I'm sorry, I have to break off the marriage. So at the same time, she falls in love with his brother, who had lost his arm in a bakery accident that he had. Anyhow, so meanwhile, the father, the grandfather here, is trying to absorb all this. Who's getting engaged, and the engagement is broken, and now we're getting a different marriage. And then at the end of the movie, they all come together. The two brothers are there, and the daughter, and the father and the wife. And the old man is sitting there, and he's shaking his head. And the father says to him, "Pop, what's wrong?" "I don't know." He says, "I'm confused. I am
Oh
so
yeah, yeah,
confused."
yeah. That rings a bell. I remember that. Yeah.
That's how I feel.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes me think of two things. Well, so first of all, the idea of radically 2022. I don't watch movies anymore in the same way unless like I'm consciously like I can't I see so much like lies now and how it perpetuates. So it's like Hollywood is like what you just said, the idea of falling in love. That's Hollywood, right? It's like what does it mean to fall in love? Well, do we associate falling with a good thing? I mean, I don't. I think falling is a bad thing, right? And of course, that's a whole other conversation. What's good, what's bad. But generally, a fall is associated with going downward. So you don't, when you tell somebody, hey, you want to move upward or you want to move downward in your life, you want to move upward. So the idea that we're associating falling in love with a fall, I think screws us up psychologically. But I understand it because what happens is we put external validation inside of internal validation. It's falling for the form, right? The egoic mind. And what happens is then our identity becomes put into the other person. I heard something recently that was it was interesting. It's like love is like getting into love is like a pool that once you're in it, um, the pool represents in other words, it's a state of love being in the pool that somebody can get in the pool with you or they can leave the pool. It doesn't change your state of mind. It's not the person getting in the pool. That's the trick. That's the mind trick, right? And I see this playing out politically, especially now, because we talk about this all the time. We got to put these talks out there because I think it'll bring sanity to some people who are having the same thought of being in that fog. But I think the reason I bring up that falling in love thing is because people can fall in love with politicians. People can fall in love with this person who seems like the savior. not realizing that what do they think, speak their truths, eh, articulate. Like for me, this past 2 years, I've said the same thing. We're being lied to on a massive scale. The question is who is doing it and why, and it's a big chess game. Everyone's going to be operating different reasons, some malicious, some honest, but you have to you have to understand your own nature to understand that. You have to see the bad guy within yourself and the good guy within yourself, the hero and the villain. And I think it's hard for people to do that because the villain's always outside. So it's, to me, that's the whole game that we're in now. Do you trust yourself or do you trust external? More so, right? Can you be fooled by the external, or are you so in trust that it's like a radical trust?
Well, yeah, and that you got to examine that in itself. Some people can trust themselves and others can't. And what is the block?
That's a good question.
What prevents someone from not trusting themselves and having to be um, endorsed or encouraged by somebody else? Why can't we trust ourselves? What's preventing that? And that I think it is a question that everybody has to ask themselves, because nobody really has nobody has the whole truth.
Yeah, and
Nobody has
and
the
we
whole.
talk about this a lot. See, I think there's universal truths and then there's personal truths. The universal truth is both of us are going to die at some point. Now we can come to accept that. I may accept that, or I may not accept that. You may accept that. That makes us different. But there's universal truths that I think people have to digest, like this paranoia of death. That's all we've heard for the past 2 years. Are you going to die? What happens if you die? Now, the kicker is people are pulled into two opposites, right? Either, oh, I don't care. I'm not afraid to die. I'll go out. I'm not going to wear a mask. The other side is, hey, I really care about other people die. I don't want other people to die. So there's pieces of truth on both sides. And I think at least the best grip I've gotten on it is move forward without fear of death. And if you're afraid of death, understand, be with that place, because in order for you to, it's reconciling opposites, right? In order to really enjoy sitting is when you're standing, right? If you're working hard all day, when you finally sit down, you can appreciate that more. If you live your whole life fearing death, then when you die, like it's not a life anymore. So I think, you watch like a good movie, the hero isn't afraid of death, but he's not arrogant. He's not looking for death. He's not looking for trouble, but he's accepted that that's part of our experience. And I think that it's also in Hollywood movies. It's like this fear of death too. It's like, oh no, I don't want to die. What would happen? Well, and I think there's a quote that in order to enter the kingdom of heaven, you have to become again like a child. And I've said that to you countless times, because you have to have that childlike curiosity, because it's, we're trying to figure this out together. But people can go to college and say 4 to 8 years. They're a master. Are you kidding me? They're a blip in the universe. The amount of arrogance that one person can have because they have a title. And I'm not saying this isn't a knock on anybody who has a degree. I think it's awesome. But I think that we can become blinded by a title. Oh, they're a priest. They're a doctor. They're a this. They have this piece of paper. Right? I've come to learn more from people who have 0 degree or someone who is a child. I've learned more from some children than I have adults, and vice versa. Different things. It's like I can learn more from a homeless person in some regard than someone who has all the titles and clothes. So I think it comes back to this external authority versus internal authority. And I think that's the idea. And that's something I really want to talk about too. Maybe we can dive into that a little bit, because I think religion gets a bad rap because it's ignorance. Like for example, for me growing up with Christianity, it's like this idea of you better pray to Christ. That didn't make sense to me. What made more sense to me is, oh, maybe Christ represents internal salvation. That makes more sense. because that's aligned with kingdom of heaven is within you. Maybe he's pointing to something other than, you know, go to church every Sunday and be good. That doesn't make sense to me. That doesn't,
Right. Yeah, it's about rules and regulations of a different form,
yes,
consequences if you don't follow the rules. Kind of similar to what we're seeing now with the government,
yeah, in different
right?
places of the world.
Yeah. The government is assuming to be God, like.
Yeah.
If we don't follow God, then we're going to be punished, whatever the punishment might be. It's the same idea. Jesus says, to go within is to see the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven, right? And what does that mean? To me, that means to be present, to be conscious, to be able to be present, and that's
Yeah, where he says the kingdom of heaven is here and now, but people don't
here and
see it.
now. Yeah, here, and that's what I'm saying. Though, why can't we? Why can't we be? Why can't we be the higher self? Why can't we switch to the higher self and be in the here and now? And I think that's what the world needs more than anything, is that childlike nature. We want to control things. Mankind wants to control things. And when you're in that control mode, you become very anxious, because what happens is that you then gain a fear of losing that control. That's where the anxiety comes from. That's where the anxiety comes from, fear of death. We want to hold
Yeah.
on. We want to control. We can't. We have to learn to let go
Yeah.
and become conscious. And if the world can't come to that, then I think it's going to be there are going to be serious consequences. So I think the key to the kingdom is inside, like you're suggesting, is internal. And the internal mechanism is to be present in everything we do. We're so busy with everything, and we're so busy with all the externals, controlling, having, as opposed to being. And so we lose sight of, the universe is already in control by forces that we don't understand, but we choose not to try to let go. That's really the challenge, all of us. Let go, just for today, just for now, just for an hour. Let it go. Have a cup of coffee, look, and enjoy your cup of coffee and your bagel, because man, it doesn't get better than that. Why worry about, oh shit, it's the 15th of the month and now I got to pay the mortgage, I'm behind, and there it goes, and on and on and on. And it takes you so far away from your reality. And that's what's happening, So that if you multiply that out, people being so unconscious, you can see what is happening in our history and what's happening now. With the pandemic, and with now we got a situation with Ukraine. It just each day brings in something else that really is based in unconscious behavior.
Yeah.
But I think for many of us, it's this innate characteristic of wanting to control. We don't have control. The reality is we really don't have control.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, because I think countless times I've come into the truth of, like, the truth is paradoxical, right? Like, and certain words I can say can expose this truth, saying, for example, I am actually the most humblest person in this talk right now. You see, that's the paradox of it. The second I say
Yeah,
I'm the humblest person, I'm no longer the humblest person.
right.
So, if I want to be cool, the cool person, someone genuine to
Yeah,
be around,
you're
the
right.
worst thing I could do is try to be cool.
Yeah, because you're
It,
playing a role.
correct. So that's the paradox. So all the things that you want, you have to let go of them in order to
How,
attract them.
how do you let it go, though? It's basically your thoughts, really, when you look
Understand.
at it.
And how do you let go is you understand why. So that's why I think the paradox becomes, for all these things going on, if someone has anxiety, for example, one of the tools is be more anxious. You can't tell somebody who's anxious, much of the time, somebody who's anxious not to be anxious. Don't worry, right? Many people are afraid of death right now. Worst thing you say is don't worry about it. Some people you can't, other, everyone's gonna be different. But I find a lot of power. No, worry if you need to worry more, worry more. See if that helps you. There's so much. See, that's a form of letting go because you're not going to change somebody. And that's, I think, one of the things in the political scheme. Whoever's wrong in the political scheme, it doesn't mean I don't think there should be discussion because I think there needs to be more confrontation rather than aggression. Someone who has the ability to confront has the ability, because if there's problems, you need to confront them. I think, and I've spoken with this with you because it's like, when you say things like, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Have a cup of coffee and bagel. I agree 50%. I think what's because you have to, you can't be in a state of fear and anxiety. So that stress, the bagel and the coffee puts you into a calmer state, which will have you deal with things. But at the same time, if we don't deal with these things that are going on, and when I say it goes back to what you're saying, being conscious. When you're more in that conscious state, you can articulate things better, but you're not afraid to confront things, right? And I think either people are cowards. I think we have too many cowards. I mean, I have this book here. I don't know where you're at in it.
Yeah,
Lot
good book.
is
The third
hard
down, yeah.
times create strong men, and in the sphere of my world and social media, this is like the Bible right now. Well, not the Bible, but many men have read it, and it points out that's a whole other thing, the polarities. I'm under the belief that, and it speaks on this in the book, is that there's two polarities. There's masculine and there's feminine. And I think a polarity is a good word. It's brought up, I believe, in the book, because what we're trying to do is play roles of men and women. How do you be more of a man? How do you be more of a woman? Rather than just connecting with your internal source, then you're naturally a man. So I don't know. That's maybe a vague way of describing it.
What I don't understand is that why do we need to know why? Why do we need to know why about everything? Why? I mean, what are we trying to get to? Even with the pandemic, who started it? How did it, and then the vaccines that have come out, and to the different versions, different interpretations of, you need one, now you need two, you need three vaccines, all this stuff that's coming on. And what would happen if we let it go? What would happen if we didn't get absorbed in all this stuff? And we just went along and just did our thing. And, we have our family and we take care of the things that we quote, in quote, control, because we really don't even control that. But we just go about our living and just take care of what we
Well,
need to
that's why I
take
think
care
it's
of.
not necessary. There's
No,
two
what
sides.
happened? What would happen? What would happen if we just let it go? I mean, that's the question I have. What happens? Because we don't know if we're being fed the truth or not. And how do we ever get to that truth? We'll never get to the real truth. So what happens if today I turn off the TV and I don't get involved in the politics, and I don't get myself all crazy, but instead I focus on my own life, and I make my bed and I have my bagel and I just go through a very simple life. I take care, do my work, and that's it. What would happen to the world? What could possibly happen to the world? It would probably be a good thing, because look what we're doing to our earth. Because we want to control nature. We're really doing a great job controlling nature, man. So that's the question I have today. Why can't we let go of all this control, which is exhausting, anxious provoking, and takes away our life?
Well, I think just after just reflecting on that, I think, because again, I can only speak from my own experiences, because when you let go of control, you open yourself up to vulnerability and people lying to you, and people take advantage of that. And and to voluntarily do it requires, I think, the ability to confront death. What do I mean by that? To me, one of the aspects of Christ dying on the cross is the idea of, and I'm not so much concerned with the historical value of it as much, like the person Christ rather than what Christ represents, to the truth of how that's rippled through time to even to this day. That when you operate on letting go internally and trusting, people will hate you for that, because what that is doing is it is exposing them. It is exposing them, and they will challenge you, I think, subconsciously, to, because we're all challenging each other, trying to understand the world, and people who can challenge us in a loving way, um, we want to be around, right? In the sense that when we're around someone who's calm, assertive, that's naturally an attractive energy. We want to be around people like that. People who are at peace is attracting. But I think that, at least for me, is the biggest thing, is because when you're at peace, people will actually hate you because you're at peace. Now,
What does it
many
mean to be at
people,
peace? What does it mean to be at peace?
um,
When you say, well, when I'm at peace, it's cool. What does it mean to be at peace? Because that's really what we all want as
the
human
full,
beings.
the peace would be the full integration of both opposites. You no longer see that, you're seeing through things through pure eyes rather than, this is good and this is bad.
Okay, and pure eyes being,
Pure eyes that nothing is bad happening. Even if I break my leg, it's okay, because I don't know how it's going to lead. That's, to me, peace, which requires, experience and coming to interpret your experience. Because the most peaceful, for example, when all this shit was going on the past couple years, if you see, there's certain politicians, there's certain people who weren't crazy. They didn't lie. Not saying that everybody, there's different versions again, and this is one big chess game and everybody's playing a different part. But you'll notice people were consistent. And I'll bring up Ron Paul, for example. I've followed him for years. He was pretty consistent this entire thing, saying the same thing. The more we give up control, regardless of what it is, the more that, it'll come back. That it's funny. It's actually exactly what you're saying. The more we're giving up control to the government, the more that will be used against us, right? So there's different
yeah,
levels of
right.
paradox in it, right? So, like, for example, you you give up control, but you also are in control at the same time. In other words, you don't let other people walk all over you.
Mhm.
So,
You know, like an ego, but that's ego, right? That's ego mindset, because nobody can really walk over the spiritual self. Nobody can walk over the I.
but I guess maybe differently said is, you're not, you can still let go and confront. It's not
Mhm.
personal anymore. It's not like you're attacking me.
Yeah,
You're attacking an idea higher than ourselves that binds us together. For example, the code of, um, love your neighbor as yourself.
yeah. I think what I'm understanding is that if we can come to a place where we can integrate our spiritual self with the ego self,
Yeah.
for lack of other words, that's where it's at. Because now you've eliminated the ego, you've eliminated the
Yes,
control.
so the
Now
ego self, right? And I'm aware of this for me. I've spoken about it. Porn, right? That's the attachment. Lust has been an attachment for me. So if you have, and it's not bound to, I know myself so much that it's not bound to me. People are addicted to food. People are addicted to, even just, there's different levels of it. Attention, getting attention. People are addicted to, whatever. I mean, I think the seven deadly sins are good expressions of the egoic mind manifested, right? Greed, pride, gluttony. These things are seeking
right.
fulfillment in the egoic world. But I know deep, but there's still a part of me that wants that, right? You want to have food, you want to be loved, there's a part, so you have to be honest with that part. And I think that's a stepping stone to integration, right? Because then you can, as Christ said, be in the world, but not of it, right? Because if you're not in the world, you're just like, okay, I'm levitating above everybody, I'm not in the world at all. And I don't think that's the game. I think the game
Right.
is to understand it, but also to let it go. So but you can be in it, but not of it.
Or operate as a human, truly a human being, operate as a, a conscious, to me, operating as a conscious human being, which would then I think uh, mean that you are integrating the true self, the spiritual self, with the egoical self.
Yeah.
To me, that's really the purpose for us. Because then it's no longer, you're no longer playing roles. You're no longer trying to have uh, a selfish motive of what you're doing. It's pure, like you said, in your words,
Yeah.
and that will result in peace. That results in peaceful living. You're no longer afraid. You know, when you're in that mode, you're no longer afraid. You get up and you're operating from a completely different mindset. It's not even a mindset. It's a spiritual um, operating system. It's a
Yeah.
spiritual operating system.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and I've talked about that. I've actually had discussions about unconditional love before. The idea of letting go. Because you asked why is that so hard for people to do? And I think you have to face all of these things in its extreme. You have to contemplate the ugliness, right? Like you look at nature, you see a beautiful tree with fruit, love the fruit, but there's this tendency not to appreciate the roots in the dirt. So in the same way, to appreciate death, that's a weird thing because there's a movie. I don't know if you ever see it, 300. It's a little Hollywoody. I think I've mentioned it to you, but there's a line in it where at the end of the movie they're dead. They're getting killed, but they voluntarily face death. And throughout countless movies, you see voluntarily facing death. Or one of our favorites, Gladiator, right? He voluntarily said, "No, I'm not going to follow um, the corrupt leader who killed his father in the movie." So he said, and he puts out his hand there's a scene in the movie where he puts out his hand and he says he doesn't shake his hand, which essentially just meant he is now disobeying the government. And this is all plays out where it comes back to end up being the greatest thing. But in the moment, to disobey the government, that was that's you're basically sentencing yourself to death. And I see the same thing happening now, not to go too political, but a lot of doctors being censored. And essentially that's the end of their career. Are they is that how we should operate? Somebody it's because I think the real courageous thing is who is getting censored, why are they getting censored, who is the threat to the power control system. So to get to that place where it's fully letting go, I think it's a scary place because throughout history, when you get to that real place of letting go, to me, the real place of letting go is nothing can happen to me that I'm going to be afraid of, or that I'm going to do the right thing and accept the consequences of that. Stupid as I am, naive as I am, I only know what I can see, but I have to do the right thing to the best of my ability. And I think most people aren't ready to face that. And I understand why. They got kids, they got a family. It's an operating system of fear and security and safety, but not realizing that when you give that up, the fear, security, safety, you you are now trusting. That's when you're operating in faith. People say they have faith. They don't have faith. They don't have faith. It's bullshit. That real people who have faith trust themselves fully. They can make a decision where it sounds absolutely crazy to the world. I mean, who would give them like the idea of Christ? Who would say, you know what, who would voluntarily be nailed to a cross? See, that's where I think the power is. That's why I think the power is not in I ought to do this. I ought to be a good Christian. I ought to do that. Look at people who have been through hell and how did they come to see the world? That's what interests me. What gives someone the strength to voluntarily accept? You've heard about people who light themselves on fire in other countries. Like, I'm sure you've heard of that at some point. People
Mhm,
self-immolating for protest or something.
mhm.
That fascinates me. How can you, because to me, you're saying there's so much suffering that I don't know how else to express it. There's so much suffering that I'll die for you so that maybe you'll see it. Maybe through my suffering, you'll see it because it's not, you're saying you want to wake people up, right? Well, most people, you can't just say wake up. It's not like get out of bed, right? It's a different type of get out of bed. How do you convey that to people? And I think it's through many of the times it's through radical action, and not radical action in the sense, there's different. Egoic radical action is starting a war. Spiritual letting go-ness is a surrender to all of that stuff. But I don't think you get the courage until you do it. I think you get the courage after you do it.
Well, I just think that the solution here, the solution, and what's the problem? You need to identify the problem before you get a solution, right? Is how do you make sense of all this? And to me, it's living a very simple life. We have a tendency to complicate things, uh, and this is why we're so divided. Keep it simple, man. You just get up in the morning, you just take a look at how you go about your day, and you multiply that by 7 billion people in the world. That's basically what makes the world go around. If everybody just kept it simple, what does that mean to keep it simple? Well, just to, like we're saying, just don't overcomplicate things with stuff. Man, it's all stuff. You take a look at what we work so hard for. People are working more than ever to build a better way. They say a better way of life, houses and all the material stuff, the houses, the cars, and vacations, and the power, the prestige, and all that. Letting go of all that, just simply living a simple life with whatever that means for you, without getting involved with all this politics, without getting involved with trying to solve all the problems of the world, which we can't do. We will not be able to solve all the problems of the world until people become conscious. And the way people become conscious is to just live a simple life. Don't complicate your life. We get bored so easily if we don't have anything to do. This is why people are addicted to the internet. The phones, they got to be on. Oh, here comes an email. Here comes it. We got to answer that message. We're driving ourselves crazy rather than just living a normal life. And we're getting away from our blueprint of being a human being. Maybe that's oversimplifying things. I understand that there is a world and we have a role to play in it. But even in the role that we're playing, if we can do that SOS, act on a spiritual basis, spiritual operating system. I don't know how that came out. SOS, something there, SOS. Yeah, keep it simple. That's the message. I think you see a major change in the world. Wow, with that simple solution. Because I don't know who's it. Was it with Democrats are in charge, the Republicans are in charge. There's a selfish, unconscious agenda every individual has. It's by nature. We have our, the dark side. We talk about the dark side. We individually all have dark side. Carl Jung says that it's important for us to identify that and understand it and embrace it because it's part of who we are. But we have to understand that we all have a dark side, and that dark side will manifest itself to what we're seeing today. So how do you fix that?
The more that that dark side is integrated, the more that that side can be used to bring people. Yeah, I mean, this goes into another thing: is spirit of the father, right? People are afraid of. We live in feelings world. The spirit. I mentioned that word, that phrase a lot. Spirit of the father. The spirit of the father is. It's the cold hard truth. It's the ability to endure. So I think it is simple, but I think again, I think that last part, it's that it's the dark side. It's doing. I think that's some of the best spiritual work is the dark. So, I mean, you can focus on the simple things in your life. Look at relationships. Look at family relationships. Look at friend relationships. How hard they are to keep. With some, and how others are easy. There's many relationships they happen naturally, but I also think that relationships that don't happen naturally, I think that's more work that can be done on your internal world. You're saying that external world, it's you can't solve all the problems out there. Sure, I think you solve the problems. I definitely agree. You solve the problems by fixing the problems in the inner circle, and your life will reflect that. If you have problems in
Right.
relationships and with your
Right.
family, friends, or you know, even Jordan Peterson, clean your room, right? That's that's a stepping stone in that direction. But I think the real power, if people really want to level up, for me, is two things: is uh, confront suffering, confront hell. There's hell everywhere. It's simple to just address it, but we don't. The simple truth is just do it, but we don't do it. I don't know that I don't want to deal with that person today. I don't want to do this today. Just I'm too tired. Think about all those things. Even at the gym, I'll go tomorrow. Go tomorrow. These like rationalizations. And that's how the world, I think, gets the way it is. People are afraid to speak up. I mean, what is it? If your boss is doing something wrong at work, do you deal with it or do you just brush it under the rug? I would say most people deal with it. Again, safety, security. There's a
Yeah.
movie. Go ahead.
I think what interferes with um, acting appropriately is, I guess, the mind, is the thoughts. Moving, acting without thinking about it, overthinking about it is where it's at. And again, it's more of that being in a conscious state. When you're in a conscious state, you're not thinking about, you're just operating from that your spiritual sense. So when you're in that spiritual sense, you're going to reach out to someone, not because you want to look like the good guy. You're operating from that spiritual person of who you really are. See that you're not
Well,
operating from your ego.
consciousness of seeing who you really are, to me, is to when consciousness is nothing more that when you see who you are, you realize everyone's the same as you. That's where I
Yeah.
was saying before. It's not when people say you ought to love your enemy. That's a lie. If you don't love somebody, you need to say I really hate that person, and come to understand why do you hate that person, because that's what leads you to loving, which is ironic, right? Because by you saying I really don't like you, there's actually more space there for you to actually like the person rather than saying I like you because I ought to, right? I'm putting on a front. Or if I don't really like somebody and I say I like them because I don't want
Mm.
to get fired or I don't want that person not to like me, whatever it may be, that tension is going to be there. You can't. So when you're in that place where I really see consciousness as just seeing the bigger game. So going back to before that, why would Christ die on the cross? And I know I'm kind of a little all over today, but it'll make sense. It's why would Christ die on the cross? He saw the bigger game. So if I think discipline goes hand in hand with um, conscious thinking. So in other words, to be disciplined, to voluntarily accept death is the core of the ego. And I keep bringing that up too, the voluntarily accepting death, because that's the worst outcome. The biggest thing that people don't want is the fear of pain, suffering, and death, right? And that can be brought out into the world too on a another level, it's the fear of rejection from your peers, from your friends, from your family, because that's a form of death. But when you're at that place where you're totally okay with that, then you can, um, to me, that's trusting God at that point. That's where your faith in God is that nothing anybody outside can say is going to make me hate them because I see myself in them. So therefore, I can destroy all false belief systems because I know that all false belief systems end up hurting me too. Until you get to that place, then you think that you can lie to other people, and there's you can use other people, you can lie, yeah, lie. It's what politicians are doing, lying, because the politicians see themselves as separate for us. So on a deeper level, the politicians are actually suffering. So they think they're different. It's they're seeing from a certain level of consciousness. So as you expand your level of consciousness, no politician is bad. Even the worst of the politicians are suffering their own internal. They're going to suffer even more because of that. It's really amazing because then you can't help but it's because that's, to me, one of my goals with Life Talks is because I want to have people on I completely disagree with, and I love them because I love them, not I love them, but I I love that, again, going back to the internal piece. I'm so self-aware that
You can be loving.
I can completely disagree with you, but my goal is to see the bigger picture. My goal
Mm.
isn't to make somebody wrong. My goal is to see the bigger picture. And if I disagree, it means that I want you to see a bigger picture that I don't think you're seeing. And I want my bad ideas to be destroyed because I want to see the bigger picture. Where are my blinders? Because if you open up my eyes more, to me, that's the best gift you can give me. But it's hard because the ego will step in sometimes and be like, no, 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 I have it figured out. I know the better way. And I'm aware of that. That comes up sometimes, but less and less as I get older. Now it's so refreshing when somebody says, wow, you really made me see this so differently. I really appreciate you. I was so wrong. There's something so powerful about that because it's like, wow, you're not attached to these ideas. You
Yeah,
you attach yourself to ideas and then you can let them go and you like grow from them.
and maybe then you can listen. We can listen better.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
just posted.
God,
Everybody hears,
God,
few listen, or the
God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. You know, if we could operate from that ratio, He gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. It means we should listen twice as much as we speak. We can do that. Simply do that. We need to be the main attraction. We, like you were suggesting. You know, the ego comes in and says, "We've got the better way. Do it my way, because I know I've got the answers here." No, we're saying step back and have really show compassion. Let the other person speak to the point where they can recognize their own faults. But we're not.
correct. Yeah, that's a good point. And it's something I realized a couple of years ago as well, is when you it's a tactic of talking to somebody you completely disagree with. Um,
Yeah.
like there's, if somebody's in 100% wrong, the best thing you can do is, yeah, let them talk, because through their own and asking the right questions, really, you know, and
Uh-huh.
it's that sometimes asking the right question is better than giving the right answer. If you have
Oh
the
yeah,
right answer and
helping
ask
them
the question.
clarify, helping them
Yeah.
clarify their thinking,
What do you mean
and,
by
and
that? What is
also
that?
at the same time, helping them understand that you're truly listening to them.
Yeah.
You're not trying to formulate your next question.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that's a rare ability. We need
Yeah,
that.
because
So
again, it goes back to that internal struggle. The more you see that anybody who is violent or angry, or they're sick, they're
right,
sick. They're
right,
not, and the sicker they are, the harder it is not to judge them.
yeah,
Because why wouldn't you want to judge them? What happens if someone's a murderer? What happens? Obviously, I mean, and there has to be some sort of, you don't want to, one, too much this way, you're a pushover, and too much this way, you're a tyrant. So consciousness, I think, naturally puts you into that straight and narrow path of
yeah,
understanding and not listening to the voice that just saying it doesn't stop all these thoughts, thousands of thoughts. and realizing that it's crazy. Like I see it now, how many thoughts I have every day, and I'm more aware of it. And then it just, I'll bump into someone who has zero awareness of all these stats. They're just, oh, it's cold today. Oh, I'm cold. Oh, it just nonstop, nonstop. Just,
Yeah.
oh, I want to do this. Let's do this. Oh, this, yeah, it's like a dog. Their attention is thrown. It's so easily swayed.
Yeah, so the overthinking mind is a big obstacle to getting to that peaceful state that we're talking about. And I can see myself, over the years, how I overreacted to my thoughts, constantly entertaining almost every thought that came my way, and just leading me in the wrong direction.
Pete, you're such a
Overthinking.
great salesman. Pete, you're such a horrible
Yeah,
salesman.
right, right,
You didn't do enough sales.
yeah.
You won the award for best.
Uh,
It's all lies.
yeah, so it's all a lie, right? I lived a lie for a long time, and it's not fun.
And
Uh,
not to say that achievements aren't good too, because I was, I was talking about like degrees earlier. I think it's like, it's a good thing to get your master's degree or to get your bachelor's degree. I think that's such a great achievement, but it's not a great achievement if you don't realize that you're not humble with it.
Yeah, if you're not humble, but at the same time, to be able to stand up for yourself, to really be yourself. And in any given situation, I can't tell you, you could spend another 2 hours and talking about situations where I was so weak and did not stand up for myself. And because again, I was afraid of losing my job or losing my appearance, my uh, looking foolish, I would shut up and then I would be ridiculed in front of my peers and stuff. And rather than standing up for who I truly was and walked out of a room or said what I needed to say
Yeah.
without fear of repercussions. Because what can be worse than being ridiculed in front of your peers? Again, in this when you're in that ego state, right? Being ridiculed in front of your peers.
Yeah, because in that state you have, the highest state is peace. Peace means no intention. But no intention, meaning no inner tension, right? You're not trying to make it go a certain way. You're just speaking authentically and honestly and what you think the best outcome is. People are going to hate you for that. But the focus becomes on when you don't have that tension inside. You're not trying to change anybody. You can speak your truth. You have the ability to be hated effectively because people will try to pull you into this emotional state. They'll try to get you angry. They'll try to, the more you don't give into that,
Yeah,
the more powerful you actually become. It's actually a power in weakness that you're not
right,
trying to change anybody's mind. You're saying,
right.
no, this is how I see it. I'm not going to own my truth. You can fire me,
Yeah.
whatever.
The key word there is no. To be able to say no
Yes.
instead of yes, and,
Yes.
and, and, and mean it. How many times I've said yes and I didn't mean it? I
Correct.
should have said no. That's would have been empowering. I said yes because I didn't want to lose my job. I said yes because I didn't want to
And that's
jeopardize.
the mind because what happens if you say no and then you get fired? But then
Yeah.
somebody bumps into you and says, you know what? I really saw what you did. That was really brave what you did.
Yeah, you
I
don't know
want
where
you on
that's
my
going to lead.
team.
Yeah, yeah, right. Yeah, you
Correct.
don't know where that's going to. Exactly. So that's
Correct.
what I'm saying. That's why you have to trust in yourself. We come
Yes.
back to that. Trust in you. Who else can you go to in this world?
And
There
that's the
is no
kicker
one.
though, the real self, because the self, the other mind will have you believing
Yeah,
it's the true self is silent. The true self is the Jiminy Cricket. It speaks when you're silent. It
yeah,
really does. When you're humble, silent, real, authentic, humble. I don't know if I repeat, I'm sure I repeated, but that is where the real answers come. And the noise is not true. Amping yourself up, like that's not it. At least advise that's it's fleeting. Like I've amped myself up, I've got myself pumped up for a day or a week.
right.
But the real power is where I'm like, I'm at peace. Like even in the gym, I when I'm working out, and I've noticed that, especially with my buddy I've been working out with, um, there's so much more power. Like I notice people at the gym. First of all, 90% of the people at the gym are not working out. They're just there. And to take a step back, good. They could be doing a million other things. The fact that they're at the gym showing up is a step in the right direction. But then the 10% of the people there, they're really working out. And Many
Right,
people are flailing, but I notice people who are really present in their workout, they're just, they're, they're, they're there. And I just noticed that so much
right.
more and I
That's it.
appreciate that so much more. And those generally are the people who have the nicest bodies. They're strong, they're slender, whatever. It's because they're at peace. And I notice for me, my
Yeah,
workouts are so good when I'm at peace, when I'm just like, they're just, I feel the strongest version and not my not so good workouts where I'm like, all right, I got to get to the gym. I
yeah.
got to get there. I got to
Mm.
do, it's not the same.
You're in a
It's,
flow. When you're in a flow of grace.
yeah,
It's
when
almost.
I'm in flow, I'll go really heavyweight or I'll go lightweight, lots of reps and I'm switching it up and it's
Yeah,
fresh. And I'm
right.
just, let's do
Because
this.
you're
Let's
out of
do
your
that.
mind. Because you're out of your
Correct.
mind.
Correct.
You know,
Correct.
we talked about this yesterday, I think. Well, why do people climb mountains? Why do people throw
Yeah.
themselves out of airplanes? Why do crazy things? Why? Because they get out of their head for the time that they're doing that
There's,
activity.
there's a quote in that movie, Peaceful Warrior, which anybody watching, watch that movie. It's really, to me, it's a hidden gem. He says where the scene I've showed you where it throws him over the bridge. He goes, You're really out of your mind." He goes, "It's taken a lifetime of practice. We're trying to get you out of your mind." I just
That's
lifetime
it.
of practice to get at, and that's really true. It's been a lifetime because the second you're out of your mind, you're actually crazy. But if you're not wise enough, it becomes a bad crazy because people, psychopaths are completely out of their mind, right? They're free, but they're free, they're free as animals, egoic.
Yeah. Well,
But
I'm
to be out
thinking
of
when
your,
I say out of your mind, I'm talking about you're out of your thoughts. You no longer
correct.
you don't have these thoughts racing in your mind anymore. We talk about the present moment. They are truly in the present moment. When you out snowboarding, you
Oh
were out
yeah.
there. You weren't having all these racing thoughts about everything, all the
Oh
stuff
no.
that's going on. You were focused in on your activity. That's why people do those activities.
Yeah.
So, but to be able to take that to the nth level and bring that into our daily life is not an easy thing to do, but that's where it's at. That's the goal.
Well, side note, you bring up that. I mean, that's those mountains out there in the West Coast, the first time seeing them. Wow. I mean,
Yeah,
that alone is worth fighting and dying for this country. I mean, those
yeah,
beautiful mountains out there.
yeah. Yeah, it's a beautiful country. It's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
You know, I
People,
spent time out on the West Coast by the water. Well, the beaches are incredibly beautiful. And there's nothing like being by the water. The water is so neutralizing. Yeah, so you have the mountains, you have the waters, you have the prairies. Beautiful, beautiful stuff that
yeah, I'll
that
be,
they took in nature.
if I was president, I would, I would institute mandatory vacations,
Hmm. Mhm.
not vaccinations, vacations, mandatory vacations for everyone. Corny joke I keep seeing on the
Okay, that's
internet.
good. But that's what we need more of. So
So
they go, we have all this beauty, but what are people, what are mankind doing? Are they enjoying this beauty? We've been given this beautiful country. What are we doing? Are we enjoying it? Typically, you think about typically, what are people doing? Working more than ever. They're involved in all this craziness. I don't know if you see what's going on in New York City. Uh, the, the, the shootings and burglaries and all this craziness. That's what people are doing instead of just enjoying their life. So it's a lot to chew on here, but I think um, again, I come back to the premise: keep it to me. It's keep it simple. Um, try to live more consciously.
you make a conscious connection with anybody, there's nothing more powerful than that.
Right. Yeah,
Con,
and it's those special. They're special moments. They're only little moments. You don't even expect. You don't plan
correct,
them. They happen.
correct. Yep.
You're right. They're gems. They're gems. Yeah. And there's no pre-planning of what you're going to say, what you're going to do.
Mhm.
It just happens. And that's what.
And the more you have that own consciousness within yourself, it's, people will literally die for you. You think about people die for kings over time. People die. What makes somebody, because there's such a belief in the person, and I think there's even more power when you believe in the person because of their belief in truth. You know that they're rooted in truth. It's a very rare, I think, relationship. I think it's the only relationship that can last forever
Yeah,
between a man and a woman
yeah,
when the focus is on God and
yeah,
what that means, what God means. It's not going to church every Sunday. It means I am so interested in understanding that internal peace. I don't want it to get it from you. I don't want when you're in a bad mood, I don't want to be in a bad mood. I want to be able to bring you into a good mood because I'm running on internal that internal juice versus external juice. How much, as you said, texting, messages,
yeah,
food. I'm on to the next thing. It's this gimme, gimme, gimme versus I'm totally cool if I'm not eating. I'm totally cool if I am eating. I'm totally cool. Like, let's go. Bring on the next moment. It's not
yeah.
how I think it should be. But I really I have to say it has to go to that dark side though. There's a part of me that likes to live on that dark side. Meaning specifically, a couple years ago I went to a graveyard nearby and I just walked around and I was crying. I was crying in the graveyard, but it wasn't like a depression. It was just like I was just reading tombstones of people, like just different just different stories. A lot of them were World War vets, and I would just think of different things, and that would get me thinking of like what makes like a soldier run into. Going back to the other question, what makes a soldier run into a bullet? I mean, the Battle of Normandy, men are voluntarily running into bullets
Yeah.
because of what they believe. So it puts me into a place where I'm just like, what am I afraid of? Why?
Mhm.
It would just, to me, that was so like, I'd like to live in that dark place because it is scary.
Well,
Because
maybe because they were able to let go. But we talked for about an hour and a half. Maybe they came to a place.
yes,
They basically they said,
but
you know what, I'm dead already. I'm. They were
yes,
already free. They weren't afraid of dying anymore. They basically already were dead.
correct.
And it's in the scriptures. We need to die if we really want to live. I don't know exactly what the quote is.
Yeah. Yeah, I think of Alan Watts too when he says when somebody says, or I forgot who it was. It definitely seems like an Alan Watts when somebody says, I don't want to live anymore. We look at that as um a bad thing, and obviously you don't want anybody to hurt themselves for sure. But I think it's the ego's way of saying I don't want to be an ego. It's our self's way of saying I don't want to be an ego anymore because it's like Eckhart had said, right? Who is this me that doesn't want to live with? I
Right,
don't want to live with myself. So that means that there's two entities.
right, right.
So so it's not, if it becomes ignorant, then the person hurts themselves, and that's sad. But what if they can see that it's no, it's my false belief systems that want to die. It's something corrupted in me that needs to die. When that corrupted part of me dies, then I live. And that's
Yeah,
again all the things that we're saying, all these attachments, the trying to find permanence in things that are not permanent. Food is not permanent, orgasms are not permanent, alcohol is not going to be permanent, but
right.
these things make you feel good temporarily. So how to and that's why, again, to go back to, that's why I have more appreciation for people who fast or people who are, they
Well, it was that
deprive
Alan.
the ego.
Al- Yeah, it's right. It's all ego based, but I think Alan Watts in describing he's a uh, uh, I think he believed he's no longer alive. He believed in Hinduism, yeah, and he talked about Buddhism also. He was also not a believer. You don't believe in Buddhism. Buddhism is, I think he says, more of a way of life. But he talked about Buddhism and explained that the beauty of the Buddhism, those Eastern teachings, was that there's a middle way that gets us to the place that we want to be. And then he talks about when he tries to describe Buddhism, he said Buddhism is the middle way, and what so it's about eliminating suffering. Well, what is suffering? Suffering is desire, and we what we want is to eliminate desire, so that we can get to that spiritual place. So, but what happens, then the question is, well, when you desire to not desire, it's another form of desire. So what do you do
Yes.
with that? So the conclusion comes to, well, you try to desire less. And again, that's kind of common to this middle of the road. To me, that's a very attractive way of thinking about things as we live in this egoic world. The middle way, to me, is is probably the closest to the truth that we as human beings can get to. And it's not going to be an extreme left and an extreme right. And I've come to see that as a good place for me to try to make some sense out of this.
And for Christianity, it's, straight and narrow path. And I
Mhm.
think the false belief is that I have to, because to the ego, it's like, there's this small place. If I'm this way, I'm no good. If I'm that way, I'm
Yeah,
like, it's, that's what's so that non-dual teaching. It's like, oh, well, I have to not be anxious. No, be fully anxious. So you come to realize on yourself that that middle way is it's an operating system that you actually will be harmonious. It's not something you ought to do. It keeps coming up with me because when I'm trying to explain it, when I try to talk with other people about this and explain this, because you can't, it goes, it's so paradoxical that it's so, everything I notice that I say is like the opposite can also be
yeah,
true when
right.
you get to that
Yeah.
level.
Yep. Yep. So anyhow, good
Place
stuff.
that there.
Yeah.
All right.
So what did we say? What did we? I mean, what came to my mind for our talk here is basically that's to me is that we have to deal with our egoic self. We're in this world, and you can't just, I don't think, completely dismiss it. Just try to make the best of it, and try to operate from this SOS, spiritual operating system, more and more to come to a place of peace.
Yeah, I agree. My thing is, fight like hell,
Mhm.
but fight smart.
Yeah,
And the best way you can fight smart is by doing what you believe is right.
yeah, yeah,
That sounds easy. It is not. It to do what is right means you're going to lose people.
yeah.
People are going to hate
Right.
you. You do it anyway.
You
And
hear Frank Sinatra's "Do It My Way"?
my way.
Brings every time I listen to that song, it gives me the chills. I didn't do it my way. It comes to mind how many times I did not do it my way. But there were times when I did.
I'm going to come
It's a
up with
good
a
place to
song
be.
called Thy Way. That's it. Because my way, ego can come in. I'm gonna
Yeah,
do it my way. It's all about me, right? And I'm not saying that that's because I get the heart of the song, but thy
yeah.
way, that word is stuck out to me too. Thy
Mhm.
will be done. Thy will, that what is thy? It means that it's not even me anymore. It's thy.
Right, right.
It's
Yep.
it's
More
so
about the spiritual self.
I'm not even thinking about it's about me. It's about what's the best win-win for me and you. So all right, good talk.
All right,
Appreciate
yeah.
it.
Joy, good talking to you.